PlayStation 2 has aged like a fine wine, cheese, or the #1 bus rider boy. With our gobs full of member berries, we've rounded up the most well-aged PS2 games out there, just in case you've been meaning to revisit some childhood memories, or even if you're checking out the PlayStation 2 for the very first time. But first, if you want to see more of our videos early every single month, be sure to become a member down below, which you can do for just £1 or a freedom dollar. Right then, who's ready to blitz some balls?
Don't hold out on me!
Square had a lot of anticipation to meet with the release of their first PS2 Final Fantasy game. Final Fantasy X met those expectations in fantastic fashion. The game took full advantage of the more powerful PlayStation 2 to provide maybe the best looking game ever made up to that point. Final Fantasy X was also the first game in the series to feature voice acting, and while it isn't perfect by any means, it's really not bad either, really. No, we don't need to show the laugh, Joe. We don't need the laugh. No, Joe, the people don't need to hear the laugh again. They don't need it again. Joe, stop. Joe, no more. No more laugh. The laughing's cancelled. Comedy has died. Okay, are we good? Are we good? Okay, good. Even if you don't like Final Fantasy X and its story of a group of heroes trying to win the Blitzball World Cup and stop some giant evil whale or something, you can't deny that Square made a game that represented what the PS2 was capable of right out of the gate. Trust me, going from PS1 cutscenes to those here was a leap so huge that I don't think we will ever see anything like it in gaming ever again. And look at that, the next entry is right on time and we still think it's very vital. SSX Tricky is the title.
Yeah, remember my name! Sweet reggae romance.
SSX Tricky is a sort of whipper where you don't have to be a fan of the sport in question to enjoy yourself. Maybe if Shaun White looked more like this peak of masculine energy, I would care about snowboarding. The game being an absolute joy to control is something you'll still notice today when picking it up, and pulling off huge ridiculous tricks is always just a joy. The game's look and music might be a bit of a time capsule for 2001, but that's really what makes it a blast today. It's extra as hell, and we love that for it. The characters are fun and memorable, and it also somehow made ginger afros cool. SSX Tricky is as much fun to play now as it was when the game came out over nearly a quarter of a century ago. Don't worry guys, I hated putting that information out there as much as I hated receiving it. Christ. And hey, both SSX Free and On Tour also hold up pretty well too, if you're looking to spice up your SSX life even more. While Auto Modelista wasn't going to replace Gran Turismo in serious racing fans' hearts, we're still talking about an extremely enjoyable racing sim with cel-shaded visual flair, some of the most beautiful and difficult tracks to be found anywhere, and enough customization potential to keep you busy for a very, very long time. Upgrades and a plethora of secrets increase your playtime, and while it obviously isn't as deep as like a Forza Motorsport, there's more here than you might expect. However, what really takes us aback with Auto Modelista is its graphical punch. The gameplay is just fine, but it's the fact that this game is well over 20 years old and looks as though it came out just a couple of generations ago that really damn impresses. Hell, if a AA publisher released this on Steam today, I'll be slamming that buy button so damn hard. This is a bright pop art racing simulation, and we wish Capcom had made just a couple more. A couple more of this next game was definitely made though. Coming bundled with a demo of Final Fantasy XII, but don't hold that against it, it's a little surprising to realise Dragon Quest VIII was released nearly 4 years after Final Fantasy X came out. Coming out a little later in the lifespan of the PlayStation 2 benefited the 8th entry in Japan's iconic Dragon Quest series significantly, as Dragon Quest VIII is even more expansive than Final Fantasy X. The game also obviously still hits visually thanks to new character designs by the late great Akira Toriyama, rest in peace king. Basically known as the Dragon Quest that most people associate with the IP one way or another, Dragon Quest VIII was notable for offering players a continuous world, a massive landscape that seamlessly connects you to the towns and kingdoms that make up your adventure. It's a traditional JRPG in its gameplay and other areas, but it's also one of the most beautiful, deep JRPGs to come out on the PS2 storied run. And hey, if you want to see where this lands on our best RPGs on the PlayStation 2 list, be sure to watch, it's like reading and watch at the same time, watch our best PS2 RPGs video, yeah! The first Kingdom Hearts game was a critical success and huge bestseller, combining Disney and Square Enix properties with original characters. Kingdom Hearts as a franchise features one of the most complex stories ever conceived for video games, with various spin-offs adding to the story of Sora and his gang of merry doofuses, but only if you have a variety of different consoles, including the Game Boy Advance and 3DS. It could get a little bit messy, really. However, thankfully Kingdom Hearts 2 is relatively straightforward, with only one game released between this sequel and the first entry. Speaking personally, I never delved into the spin-offs and still knew my Riku from my Roxas, I think. One of them was in Final Fantasy X, right? Anyway, Sora's back along with Goofy, Donald and the others. The sequel has an incredible array of Disney and Square Enix characters, integrating them pretty seamlessly with a sprawling action RPG that still plays quite beautifully. The game holds up exceptionally well after nearly 2 decades, but you can quite easily get your hands on it on modern platforms if you need some more pixels though, and that applies to this next game too. They don't get much more controversial than Metal Gear Solid 2 Sons of Liberty and what happened with protagonist Solid Snake. Probably one of the earliest pop culture internet controversies, right alongside people being mad that the Phantom Menace was bad, people were not happy on the Snake switcheroo that happened here. Me, personally, this was the first game in the series I played, so I was just along for the insane ride. Time has been very kind to this espionage classic though, with many people now seeing it as a prescient, important piece of gaming history. Metal Gear Solid 2 looks and plays just fine in the current gaming landscape, especially if you play it in the Master Collection. Where it really feels timeless though, albeit unfortunately, is in its story and themes of artificial intelligence and vast political conspiracy in an ever dangerous new chapter of the information age. MGS2 was pretty heady stuff in 2001 and it still is now. Do not mail your fish in and play this game if you haven't already. This is my favourite game of all time for a very good reason, and I play it at least twice a year. It is the absolute opposite of
A dud!
Silent Hill 2 might be the more famous sequel at this point, with a hopefully doesn't completely the bed remake slated for release this year. However, Silent Hill 3 is an overwhelming force of story, atmosphere and character that makes it just a little more timeless in our eyes. It's another deeply disturbing chapter in the series for sure, but Silent Hill 3 stands on its own as one of the most brutal and compelling survival horror games of all time. Players control a young girl named Heather who finds herself in Silent Hill without any clear idea of why. That's for you to find out, and across some brain-scratching puzzles and visceral combat, you're going to get some pretty grim answers. Also, giant bunnies. Nothing about what worked so well for Silent Hill 3 has changed between its 2003 release and the present. If The Wind Waker is timeless for its cel-shaded whimsy, Silent Hill 3 is the opposite side of the coin. It is a gritty, grimy, technical marvel with animations that still hold up remarkably well even today. If you like the big rabbit, how about a raccoon? Sly 2 Band of Thieves is the sort of pitch-perfect PS2 experience that, while beloved by almost certainly millions of people, still doesn't quite feel properly respected. Not only are the graphics, music and even the voice acting still an absolute pleasure, but the stealth-focused gameplay is still some of the most enjoyable to be found on any current or past console generation. Just saying it's a stealth platformer really doesn't do it justice though, as this game flip-flops between genres more than Nier Automata sometimes. Seriously, this follow-up in the adventures of Thief and Raccoon Sly Cooper is really good, and it's really bad that Sony hasn't made anything new with this IP for like a decade. Improving upon the first Sly game in every possible way, Band of Thieves is a colourful, endlessly amusing platformer. It hits all of the notes you're expecting from a game like this, but is also far more ambitious and all round just daring than many people give it credit for. And hey, the original game and prequel still hold up really damn well too. Make another one, Sony, go on, do another one, Sucker Punch, you got some time. What are you doing at the minute? It's Ghost of Tsushima 2? Sly Raccoon, mate. God of War 2 is a textbook definition of how to make the perfect sequel, one which we would argue is superior to the absolutely awesome original in every conceivable way really. Picking up after the events of the first game, God of War 2 once again has players as the brutal, powerful Kratos. As the new God of War, you've got vengeance on your mind, which means hammering square and triangle until the cramp sets in. The PS2 had a lot of truly bonkers, massively ambitious games towards the end of its life. Games like San Andreas that really had no right to work on turn of the millennium tech when you think about it, but this 2007 banger had you fighting giants, decapitating gods and shagging at a cinematic scale simply never seen before, and it all still lands pretty well today. God of War 2 has steep difficulty, addictive gameplay and puzzles that never veer you all the way into complete insanity. It's also still one of the best looking games the console ever got, just like the game to close off this video. Okami has been released in a variety of formats and on several different consoles and has seemingly never been able to be a huge success sadly, but the 2006 PS2 original is still an absolute wonder to behold. Just like God of War 2, the PS2 being able to handle this expansive, ambitious game that honestly could have been a PS3 launch title is still a bit of a shocker, showing just how versatile and even almost future-proof the system was. Okami is still one of the most compelling games of its time, and it still packs a pretty damn big punch today. Okami tasks you with defeating a host of monsters, restoring colour to the feudal Japan landscape, and bringing the natural order of life back to its proper and essential balance with your miracle paintbrush. If that's enough to pull you in, we promise that Okami is going to keep you playing for a long time. Seriously, a long time. No, seriously, it's like 30 hours long. Okami is available on modern platforms, but there's something dreamy and beautiful about playing it on original hardware that really is timeless, and it's one of the most beautifully aged PS2 games of all time. And that was our video going over some PS2 games what have aged proper goodly in that. What games did we miss out on? What shouldn't have been on here? What should have been on here but shouldn't have been? I've been Jimmy for Cultured Vultures, and thank you for watching.